You know, I've met a lot of economists. I wish we had more like Stephen Moore. That was impressive. I'm still thinking about the cover of the New York Times on November 9th. Thank you. Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Vin, for hosting us. This is quite an event. I'm going to start with a story very similar to the one you just heard, because it's the first chapter of my book, Defeating Jihad. I'm a national security wonk. I eat, drink, and sleep jihadism and national security. So when I was asked to write a book about it, I was going to sit down and write about national security. And my wife said, Katie, sitting there trying to hide, she said, "Are you nuts? You can't just write a book about national security. Do you want to sell some books? You need to connect with your audience, right? You have to have that connection. And how do you do that? You tell a story. We all love stories. So before I dived in to talk about the evolution of jihad, what is Al-Qaeda, where did ISIS come from, I devoted the first chapter, and it's the only chapter anybody ever talks about when they meet me. I devoted it to a completely other topic. And that topic was my family and my parents. So my parents were born behind the Iron Curtain. They were born in Hungary, and they were raised and grew up in that communist dictatorship. My father, as a teenager, decided to resist dictatorship. He wanted to push back, and he became an underground activist against the communists. Unfortunately, he and his fellow patriots who were fighting for freedom and independence were betrayed by Kim Philby, who you may have heard of, one of the most heinous traitors of the Cold War, he and his so-called Cambridge apostles. As a result, at the age of 20, my father was given a life sentence in a communist prison. He spent 2 years in solitary, not 2 months, 2 years without human contact, and then 2 years down a prison coal mine. However, in the glorious 10 days of October 1956, that became the Hungarian Revolution, he was liberated by his fellow lovers of freedom. He was rescued from that prison, and with the daughter, the 17-year-old daughter of one of his fellow prison mates, they made it out across the minefields, across the barbed wire, to freedom. As a result, I was born and raised in the UK. But from my very earliest moment, because of their history, I was inculcated, in my mother's milk, literally, I was inculcated with one very important belief. Ronald Reagan was absolutely right. The loss of freedom is always but one generation away. Freedom and liberty are as fragile as they are precious. And the fact is, today as a nation, we again face a totalitarian threat. We have fought totalitarians before. We fought the Nazis. We fought the communists. And today we are fighting a new brand of what I call hybrid totalitarians. They're not fighting for Karl Marx. They're not fighting for Adolf Hitler and some Aryan perfect ethnic empire. They're fighting for their God. Whether it's Al-Qaeda, whether it's ISIS, whether it's the Tsarnaev brothers in Boston, whether it's Omar Mateen in Orlando, we again face a totalitarian threat. And it is important to remember, I'm a proud American now, it is important to remember that it took America to defeat the Nazis. It took America to defeat the Soviet Union. And guess what? it's going to take America to defeat this new enemy. The world is on fire, ladies and gentlemen. It is on fire. Wherever you look, whether it's Asia, with China intimidating its neighbors, whether it's the Middle East, with ISIS re-establishing the caliphate, whether it's Europe, where Russia has invaded one of its neighbors, or whether it's Africa, where Al-Qaeda, that we don't talk about anymore, is more active than it has ever been. We are in trouble. I have had the honor to meet Mr. Trump. I have had the honor to advise him last year. I'm not part of his campaign, but we met on more than one occasion and we discussed national security issues. And let me tell you one thing. Whatever you think about Mr. Trump, or whatever your friends think about Mr. Trump, make them understand one thing. This man understands we are at war. Not only that, this man, and I'm convinced of this, wants to win that war. So, I'm going to go off my usual beat right now, okay? I could talk to you for hours about jihad and strategy and all that fun stuff. But we're here for a reason. We're here because of November 8th. So let me make a personal request to all of you. Number one, whatever you do, do not lose faith. The senior economic advisor to President Reagan published an article today on how all the polling figures should not be trusted. The polling figures, the pollsters, are pre-selecting how many Democrats and Republicans they talk to based upon the turnout in the last two elections, which is absolutely not necessarily the turnout for this election. You heard Stephen Moore. I've seen it. I travel 20,000 miles a month. I see the Trump signs everywhere. So do not believe the hype. We can win. We must win. We must win, and this is not hyperbole, because I am not somebody who tends to exaggerate. I like facts, and I'll tell you one fact. This election, no matter how old you are, this election is the most important election in your life. The stakes could not be higher. So let me make a personal request to you. Don't lose faith, and in the next 2+ weeks, I want you personally to take the example of Alice, Laura, her team, and do whatever you can to get as many people to the polling stations. This is why Romney lost. Because we had people who considered themselves to be conservatives, people who considered themselves to be Republicans, stay home. And what does the other side do? Bus in voters. So, number one, specific request. You, whether you are in a couple or not, I want every single individual in this room to promise me you will take 5 people to the polling station on November 8th who otherwise would have stayed at home. Number one. Number two, whatever your age cohort, whoever you like to hang out with, we must convince as many millennials and as many people that this is about their future. And the way to do this, I'm going to be harsh now, we have teenage children, so I'm going to talk about the realities of working with the next generation. Do not rely on logic. Okay? All right? Because you won't win. You won't win. When people like Bernardine Dawn and Bill Ayers realized they couldn't have a Marxist revolution in America when they were part of the Weathermen Underground, they remembered what Lenin, what Trotsky, and what Hitler said. And they said, give me their youth and I will take the country. And that is what they did. We ceded the schools, we ceded the colleges to the radical left. That is why you have incredibly mind-blowing things such as the Bernie Sanders phenomenon. Okay? So don't argue based upon taxation rates. Don't argue based upon how many food stamps are issued. Forget about facts. Okay? Do what the left does. Talk about emotions. Talk about the soft and fuzzy stuff. Because that's the only way we will convince them to vote for the only person who is fit to serve in that office and protect America. So how do we do this? One thing. Talk to these people and just send them the link to the video on YouTube of Clinton Cash. Clinton Cash, the book by Peter Schweitzer, is a slam dunk indictment of the organized crime cartel that is the Clinton family. The book is great, but people don't read anymore, okay? So point them to the video. Just the first 16 minutes on how Hillary and Bill Clinton built the Haitian Republic of millions of dollars meant to go to the victims of the Haitian earthquake will make every millennial who sees it want to throw up in disgust at Hillary Clinton. So mobilize your friends, mobilize strangers, get them to the voting booths, and convince as many people who are on the fence that they must not vote for Hillary and Trump is the only answer. Clinton Cash, YouTube. It's got more than 2 million views. It is a very, very powerful tool in our possession. Okay, on the last note, you've heard about the book. If you're interested, please come up to me. We can provide you with flyers. If you want me to sign it, we'll find a way to work that out as well. That is possible. But one last personal request. I know personally Stephen Bannon, who is Mr. Trump's campaign manager, and I want to send him a photograph of all of you guys. So he can give it to Mr. Trump. So can I ask you to stand? There's so many of you, you're going to stand still now, all right? Stand still. Okay?
Trump!
Stay there. Hands up in the air. Thank you, everybody.
I just want to repeat him. We must win. We must win. My mom, 103 years old, she will go to vote this year too for Trump. Ask my mom, 103 years. She's been here today. Okay, so we must win. We must win. Right here, Trump, and she will vote for Trump. She will vote for Trump. Okay, no, she can't. Okay, she's the one, 102 years old, and we are Vietnamese. Okay, thank you. And I promise I will bring some friend of mine, senior, go to vote that day. Every year I go to vote. And this year we vote for Trump.